Welcome to the Bookish Rambles Podcast, hosted by me, Holly.
And me, Becky.
Where we're going to talk about all of the books that we've read, books that we want to read, and then every other week we'll switch over to writing, because we are also writers as well as readers.
Yes, and so we'll be talking about like the projects that we're working on, any tips that we have, and any other projects that we might be choosing to talk about.
With a big side of rambling on about nothing for...
Because we both really like to ramble about stuff, apparently.
I think the first thing that we should talk about is the book that we have both read.
Yes.
And we had, I think, different opinions of it, but also not that different.
No, so that book was The Lamb by Lucy Rose. So...
It's a pretty new book, actually.
Yeah, did it come out this year?
Yeah, I think it was January, maybe even.
Yeah, because I think, obviously, when I had the gift card, I saw it and thought, oh, this looks interesting. And I accidentally bought it. I say accidentally. I didn't realise it was the signed version.
No, I didn't realise mine was signed either.
No, it wasn't really advertised. It was just like, signed by the author on a little sticker. So.
I literally caught me realising that it was signed on camera. It's so funny. So, The Lamb by Lucy Rose is described as a gripping, sinister folktale set in contemporary Cumbria, and it is a folk horror story.
Yeah, so it's got like it reminded me a bit of like Angela Carter and how the way that she messes with fairy tales. You know, I'm sure.
Do you know what? I haven't read any Angela Carter, but that is actually one of the names referenced in this description that I'm reading.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
No, yeah, because I had to study her. I'm sure it's either Carol Ann Duffy or Angela Carter, but I think it's Angela Carter.
I think they might both. Carol Ann Duffy, though, is more like poetry.
Yeah.
So the prose...
This is years ago, I'm thinking of.
But yeah, so I think...
The very similar style, because I think she was inspired by her, because some of the stories are very like feminist, and obviously The Lamb has a very feminist message.
Yeah, I mean it's a sapphic. I don't want to say sapphic romance because there is a sapphic romance, but it's
sapphic horror.
Yeah, it's more like. Do you know what I will say though? Because we're going to talk about it a lot, and we're going to spoil for anyone.
Yes, we are definitely going to spoil. So if you don't want to be spoiled, please go and read the book and then come back.
Yeah, do come back, please.
Yes, come back.
I think that it was genuinely quite shocking to me. Which I think, do you know what? Maybe it's just because I've been reading a lot of... Specifically, I read 2 Stephen King horrors so far this year.
Right.
His tend, I would say, to work out okay in the end. Like, they're not necessarily... Like, they don't work out perfectly, but you don't end up, usually with him, having this sense of, like, depression afterwards. Whereas I would say this book was, like, the ending, I genuinely didn't think that she was going to die.
See, I thought she was, because I just thought, like, I suppose, I saw this thing recently where people were commenting about how, like, between British and American media, British love tragedy and Americans love happy ending. So that's where I was kind of going, especially because it's a horror. And horrors then... Sometimes horrors will have a happy ending, but I think a lot of British horror doesn't. Is really quite depressing.
Yeah, I think a lot of... Because even, like, there's an episode of Doctor Who that I think is, like, a perfect horror episode. It's called Midnight. And it's so good for, like... Because at the end of it, the Doctor isn't the one who saves them in that situation. And I think that there's this sense of Doctor Who where it's always the Doctor who either saves people or loses people because he isn't able to. But in this case, it's him who's at risk. And it's like, you can't save everybody. Yeah, and I think that kind of depressive feeling is the one that I associate a lot with very English, especially rural, set in Cumbria. I think that in the sort of... It's woodland. Like, it's very isolated from the world. But for me, it was the bus driver. He was, he is the one...
He was a really prominent character. Oh, yeah.
he's the one who finds them all dead and discovers basically what's happened. But I think I was kind of unsure whether or not it was going to be too late for her or if she would be saved by him. Like, I wasn't sure where it was going to go fully. So I was I think I was impressed that she was willing to do that.
Yeah, I was surprised that a kid knew how to poison, but then again, I suppose from the background.
When you grow up like that.
Grow up killing people, you kind of pick that up, don't you?
Yeah. That was the thing that I think was a big no for me, though. Like, I felt like...
Is that realistic, you think? Yeah, is that... Because we don't really know how old she is. I was thinking she was maybe year 2, year 3, from what I could gather.
Well, the thing is, I think at one point she was like 5 or 6.
Yeah, so that is year 1.
Yeah.
That's reception in year 1-ish.
And for me, it was the cloakroom, like the class cloakroom, because I know that she lives in a very rural place, so that would be like reception. But also,
I can't imagine a 5-year-old doing that.
Yeah. The rabbits.
Oh yeah, that. But to be fair, though, if she's been taught how to kill people, when you think about that, how on earth did a kid manage to sneak into a school and hang all the rabbits up without like a cat?
Who was I think Eden. Is her name Eden? Yeah, I think she was there at that point as well, wasn't she? So
I don't. I think she was.
That happens during the story rather than like the prologue. So I think that Eden was there, and Eden was very strict. Like, she was the one who kind of pivoted the relationship.
Yeah. See, I've always wondered, like, what was the difference between Eden just showing up in a snowstorm? She was like, because I remember her backstory, she was mentioning, I was looking for someone like your mum.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden you just happened on this random house. But then it kind of, I was thinking, like, her backstory, that she might have been a cannibal before, like...
Yeah.
Like, because she did stop her mum from killing for a while. She was like, no, we need to be careful, she's going to get caught.
Yeah.
But, like, her mum's been doing it for a while and she hasn't been caught yet, so I think she's alright.
I think it's really interesting, that dynamic. And I think, to be honest, the mum is obviously not a good person, but I feel like when she meets Eden, she's almost like manipulated into becoming different. Because in a way, I feel like she's kind of portrayed almost like an addict, you know? Like, she's desperate for this food, and she starves herself ready to eat her child because she's told to do that by Eden. I feel like Eden is this really, like, sinister character who, for a while, seems quite nice to the daughter of this woman that she's got a relationship with, and then I think you start to see that she's actually quite violent, even with this girl, and you realise, oh, she's definitely in trouble.
Like, oh, we had such a good thing going, and now she's been split up from her mum, because she falls in love with a classmate, doesn't she? Because they kill her father at one point.
That storyline is so sad to me.
And that's what she at him.
And the way she's like,
part of me now.
Yeah.
You'll be part of me. That's creepy.
The way that she sort of views her relationship with food and, like, feeling like it's still a part of her, like, weeks later, that is, I think it's so, like, it was really messed up. And it wasn't the cannibalism that made me feel a bit disgusted, because, like, I'm pretty good with cannibalism. It was that, like, family violence and the sort of dysfunctional life of this young child who clearly had a lot of empathy and deserved the chance to be safe.
Yeah, because what we only see her through, like, Margot's lens. Margot.
Yeah.
Margot. Okay, I'm gonna look that up. How would you pronounce Margot?
It is Margot.
Is it Margot?
Yeah.
But because, like, Margot Robbie.
But I think...
Wow, Ray was had an aneurysm.
I've been there. Tobias.
Yeah. Oh, Tobias.
Always got
to
me.
be fair, that is. Yeah.
Um,
So like we only see her through Margot's lens. So and
yes.
I think she makes her to be like this kind of mythical creature when she's just a kid that's going through family.
Yeah.
But then I think that's like the fairy tale vibe that Lucy Rose is going for.
Yeah, it's very suspension of disbelief is sort of pushed to its limit, I would say. Like you have this child who seems capable of things that no child really would. You have the fact that no one came to check up on her while she had been locked up. The fact that no one thought at any point to like question her. The bus driver, I think if he had like reported it to authorities that he thought she was at risk, because he obviously did.
Yeah, see, I was trying to figure out what year it was set in. I thought it was like modern day. Even though it wasn't modern day. Was it modern day or was it more like early? It was early 2000s, I think.
See, it's hard to tell
Maybe?
because they live very remote.
Yeah, but
So
see, I
like,
did
do they
look up where
just?
they lived, because obviously the only bit of Cumbria I've ever been in is the Lake District. So I looked up where they lived, and it is like really remote. So
See, like,
it would
is it
make
just
sense.
behind on the times? I couldn't quite figure that out myself.
See, it's
But
because
I
they
think
had a
that's
house phone,
intentional.
but then people do have a house phone. See, I
Yeah.
like time. I love like placeholder. I don't like being told specifically like the time period. I love placeholders, not
It's nice to
placeholders.
get context clues, like, oh, this
Context,
singer
yeah.
who was born.
So like a reference to a TV show or something or a game, and then you're like, ah,
Yeah.
I'll look this up, and then you'll know.
Because I think it's definitely to its benefit in a way that we don't know because it's like, okay, maybe they didn't have this technology, maybe forensics wasn't what it was. Like, the police clearly weren't doing a good job.
Mm.
Because that was the thing that got me was that they, from this road, like they bring people in and yet they don't get caught. But also, I do think that it felt a bit hard sometimes to get into it and to feel able to trust that they wouldn't have gotten caught because we didn't know exactly what technology the people who would be catching them would have.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I remember there was a scene where one of the strays, the car breaks down and she has a mobile phone.
Yeah, but there's no service.
Yeah, so I think it is modern day.
Yeah, I think that's what
But
threw me as well.
I think that's such a good, like, I think she's managed to do that really well, though. The fact that it's modern day, yet it doesn't feel like modern day at all.
Yeah, like it
Really done
feels
that
very
well.
isolated and you can get that sense of almost claustrophobia when she's like trapped and you
Yeah, she's done
think,
it really well.
uh, I will say those last like 50 or so pages I think were the best. Like it was quite slow
Yeah.
and then all of a
Oh, it was
sudden
so slow.
it was like, when is she going to be killed? Is she going to get, not revenge, but is she going to manage to bring justice about, you know, to these people?
Yeah, see, like, I'm just gonna get my copy. Hang on. This was, okay. There was a lot of chapters, if I remember correctly, because the chapters were not very long. I would say these chapters are probably about 500 words to 800 words.
Yeah, some of them were only like a page, I think.
Although I do like the font because it's so easy to read. So, like, this copy I have is 329 pages, and there is 80 chapters.
Yeah, so it was a lot of chapters. I did like that. I think when you have a book that's very dense in the topic, it can be nice to have like a lot of chapters to break it up because it did get very depressing. I will say that, like, even though I didn't necessarily, I was disappointed with this book compared to what my expectations were because I've read a few cannibalism books and I said a few years ago, and I think I said this in my TBR video where I was like, I'm gonna read The Lamb, but I predicted that the cannibalism thing was going to get big before it became like a staple of literature, because it is, I think, a really interesting topic and it's one that's become not less taboo, but we're more willing to talk about the grisly details of things that really happen. And so I think cannibalism horror, when it's done from like a first person perspective, from the person who actually is a cannibal, it's really interesting. And I think that's why this let me down a bit, was because I had these quite high hopes, and then I think it came back a little bit in those last like 50 pages where it was a race against time almost to see if she would be able to escape. And I know that obviously would be different from you because you knew that she wasn't gonna survive.
Yeah.
But I think that the tension in those pages really made it feel like a faster reading experience.
Although, can I talk about the cover? I absolutely adore the cover.
Yes.
I think it's so different. Well, I think there's two covers. I think there's the American version,
which is like
it doesn't. Yeah, I mean, well, I absolutely love the UK version. Yeah, like, so we've got obviously the Thai biography, and then like a slice of meat, and then I assume that's probably supposed to be either her mom or Eden. It's not going to be the girl because that's a woman.
I thought that was Eden personally.
Yeah,
like that was the vibe I got, was that it was this mysterious person who's like the center of the story.
Yes, because Eden just...
she's the catalyst. She's the antagonist as well.
Oh, are you sure? Because I'm just... hang on, I'm sure Eden had blonde hair, and I've just found... she had eyes like puddles and her hair looked like straw blonde and pulled back into a ponytail.
So maybe that is a mother.
Yes, because her mother's such a central figure that...
see, oh, and that would make sense because it's like been advertised as mother-daughter relationships.
Yeah. See, I thought there would be more of that in the book, but...
see, I did too. That was like one of my things, was that the cannibalism was good, but I think that it wasn't what I was expecting. And then the mother-daughter stuff, it was there, but I think that it was more about like her mother was... she was very quick to turn on her daughter.
Yeah.
She went
it's almost like she regretted her.
Yeah, like she went from being like, it's just us in this world, to, well, I never liked you, you're just a waste of space. Which, it felt quite quick. And I get it, but also I wish that almost the book had been a little bit longer and had written more of their relationship, and rather than her mother very quickly latch onto Eden, I wish that it had been a slower thing, maybe. I think that, for me, would have maybe made it better. But I do agree that the cover, apart from the fact that I have no memory of what characters visually are supposed to look like because I don't visualize them, I love that it looks...
no, I remembered, that's all.
Yeah, no, to be fair, good, because we now know that is probably the mother. Like, it's unlikely it's anyone else. But I think that the half of it being a picture and then half of it not, it gives a very, like, classic feel.
Yes. See, it reminds me of, like, a Renaissance painting.
Yes. And, like, especially when you look at the modern classics, there's different versions of them, the Penguin ones. But some of them have, like, the top half is white with the title, and then the bottom half is a picture. It gives that same, like, very... not necessarily historical, but like it's, you look at it and you understand that this is supposed to be beautiful. Like, it's not a horror that's sort of about gratuitous violence. It's about the impact of the actions and the emotional side of that, which is, I think, accurate.
I think there is a book trend. There's a book cover trend that's happening in certain books. So, like, you know, the romance books with the cartoon covers, when they're not shouldn't be cartoon covers. Yeah, I'd understand if it was young adult, but for an adult,
yeah. Because as well,
I like some of the covers. I think some of them are really inventive, but I think when it's every single... yeah, but when it's every single cover, it's like, come on.
You start
so
to
it's definitely
in together as well. Like, you start to think that, oh, this is just a romance that's like very formulaic. It's focused more on the smut perhaps than on the actual relationship, which is... I think people are tending away from that now because they've read so much of it when it's been popular for the last few years.
It's that with romantasy as well. I think people are tired of reading the same storyline.
There's something of something and something.
Yeah, but, like, I'll read some crappy romances and it's like, and I'm like, I've read this before. I wouldn't mind reading formula, but with characters who aren't like this like dark green man or something like that. I'd
Morally
like
grey men and short
morally
women.
grey men
And the thing is,
and
I'm
more
super
feminine
biased.
men are more tuned to our emotions, which I
Yeah.
think I do write a lot of.
Well, I mean, we've both read each other's books. First of all,
Yeah.
yeah, because obviously your main character, who we'll be talking about next episode.
Yes, I can't wait to talk about.
He
I
is
can't wait to talk about him.
I made a video talking about how mine isn't even a romance, but like the love interest is, I think he's my favorite book boyfriend ever, because he like immediately sees my character and is everything that she needs him to be, but without being like what is the male version of like a manic pixie dream girl?
I have no idea.
Is there even one? I don't feel like there is, because I think it's a very like male fantasy.
Yeah, so the male version of
But that's what
manic.
Eden is, basically. She's like this mysterious woman who is like exactly what her mother wants her to be, and
I've looking on it. There's like an article on Reddit that says it's Michael Sarah. Oh,
I never
so
know how
like
to say his name.
I have no idea. So I suppose it'd be like Juno, the film with
Yeah.
him being the other character. I've never watched it, but I assume it'd be like something like that, maybe.
I've seen it, to be fair. It's
So I
it's
think you
actually
get what
a
I'm
really
on.
complex film. Um, like there is a plot line in that film where she decides to keep the baby but give it to a family, and the mum in that like family, it's because it's a man and a woman who can't conceive, I don't think, and this woman is like lovely, and she's like the perfect mother for this baby, and the man seems perfect, but then it very quickly becomes sinister, where he wants to be with Juno.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah. And you don't see it coming because the film is kind of like from her perspective.
Poor Elliot Payne, you would have had to deal with that.
Yeah. So
Ooh.
it's a really like wholesome story, but it's a wholesome story that has like some pretty severe topics, including like the fact that the abortion clinic, she goes to an abortion clinic to get the baby because she's a teenager, and then she is like told that her baby is this big and whatnot, and even though it's not accurate because it is like very pro-life propaganda stuff, as is typical, she is like frightened because she's a teenage girl who is pregnant, and the guy that she is having a baby with, it's a love story between them, but it's also about this woman who realizes that her husband is not a good person, and all she wants really is a baby because she has so much love to give. So it's one of those stories that I think in a way is kind of similar to this one in its dynamics. Like it's got, this child who the story is centered on, but then you also have the dynamic between the parent figures and, this adult who's like being really supportive of her and saying like, if something's happening at home, if things are rough, you can tell people.
It's fine, just tell people, open up. It's fine.
Bless that bus driver, honestly.
Yeah, although it's not a great ending.
No.
But like back to the book cover trend before we.
Right.
Like,
sorry. Continue.
So the romance books, and I've noticed a pattern with literary fiction, because this is a literary fiction novel.
Yes.
That they've gone for the Renaissance painting, because there's a book called My Year of Relaxation
My Year of Rest
and that has got a Renaissance painting. It looks like something from like Jane Austen.
I actually I like that author, and I have 2 of her books currently, and they're not quite the same, but they do have that very like a landscape, a sort of painting of a statue type vibe on the cover, which I think people in the literary fiction space, they love statues and paintings, and they love beige filter images. Like, yeah, I know what you mean with that one though, especially. And the lamb, no, not the lamb, Lapvona by her. I actually own 3 of hers. That one, there's an image of a lamb if you look it up, because I don't know how to describe it, but that is also like another classical painting that they've cut out the sheep, I think.
Yeah, see, I'm looking on Goodreads at some of the books that I also enjoyed, and like there's a book called Victorian Psycho, Hungerstone, and then Shy Girl. They're all like Renaissance paintings because Shy Girl has a grey hat on
See,
what it looks like.
it really is. They do love like, and I think as well they love like to put it in a border sort of thing.
Oh.
Where is the literary fiction? I'm gonna look it up.
Literary fiction explores character more than plot. But I would say The Lamb definitely has some sort of plot.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does explore characters more.
I think it is really, it's character based, but the plot is like what you're there for, really. Like you're there because this woman arrives and it shifts everything into this kind of creepier, less safe version of it. Also, there's a version called, like on the Readers Also Enjoy, there's a book called Hungerstone. That is the same. That's like literally like a painting.
See, I like literary fiction on certain books, and then I've got a love-hate relationship with it because I'm such a contemporary fan. I love contemporary because I want to read about modern day relationships, and because that's what we experience all the time.
Yeah.
But I do like a bit of sprinkling. I do like a bit of seasoning in my book.
See, I mean, we've spoken about this before, but I do love a bit of lit fic, and like I'm a modern classics and classics reader more than I think contemporary at this point.
Yeah, see, I like fantasy as well, but because I got recommended to read Donna Tartt's The Goldfinch. Can I just say I absolutely hated it?
See, I didn't enjoy The Secret History, but I'm like reading Donna Tartt's. I don't know if I've mentioned this to like the public, but I've definitely spoken about it with you. I think that I'm planning on doing my undergrad dissertation on Donna Tartt because I think that the books have a lot of content that I could write about, but I don't enjoy them that much.
No, I think Donna Tartt's really good at character, but I think trying to contrive a plot.
Yeah,
because
that's a really good scene. But
The Goldfinch, didn't you say that The Secret History had a lot of drug abuse?
yeah, they're all very, they're alcoholics.
The same thing for The Goldfinch. I think she just wants to write about kids abusing drugs.
Yeah, I think that's, do you know what? I'm at an age now where there's a lot of YA that I think writes down rather than, like, I don't know if you get this, but when I was growing up, I feel like the YA that I read was to increase your reading skill. It was to give you something that was enjoyable, but in a way that made you think. Whereas now I think a lot of YA is, there's some good YA that is like obviously well written, but there is a lot of YA out there that gets really popular and published, which I've tried reading it, and I, without even realizing that it was YA, I read it and I was like, yeah, this is too young for me actually, because the writing was just very
mediocre.
Yeah, and I don't think
I'm not
that
saying,
that's
like,
a thing of the genre. I think it's just that the way that books are being written now, a lot of them do talk down to their audience, and it's quite frustrating because as someone who has been reading sort of adult books since I was quite young, it does feel a little bit insulting to pick up a book hoping that it's going to be good because it sounds like it'll be good, and then you read it and it's just not at all what you wanted.
So apparently kids are reading up from what they should be reading, so like 13-year-olds are reading books, 15-year-olds and up apparently.
Well,
This is speculation, so do you think that maybe could be something?
I think the problem, honestly, is that America's literacy is terrible, and America is a huge part of the publishing space. So I reckon that they're probably bringing it down a bit. No offense to Americans, but it is like true that their education system's just a mess.
I
So
think it's really sad though as well because YA is such an important genre and it does get
and
looked down upon.
it's also becoming more popular with adults, which isn't like bad in the sense that adults can read what they want, but it's also like you've
Yeah,
got
this is where
to
the line gets blurred
like you
between
can't
you.
read young adult stuff and expect it to cater to you as an adult. It should be catering to those people who need to have something that isn't quite as graphic and whatnot as an adult text would be.
Exactly, which is like because obviously I have a master's
Yeah,
and people have said that my writing feels very white, but
you are a
that is the
YA.
majority. Yeah, that is the majority because obviously my master's. I think with a creative writing masters, they always want you to write for adults because they
Yeah,
look down on YA as if it's something like dirty. Yeah, it's one of the most popular.
it's literally
But
like the building blocks as well.
when you think I am only in my 20s still, so it's like that. My teenagers are still a big part of my
Yeah,
life that I don't look back fondly on, to be honest. But which is why I want to write for teenagers who
maybe
are
feel
going
that
through stuff
way.
like that.
Yeah, I
Like I
think
will write adult books because I do think I will want to write about 20-year-olds because one of my fantasies I want to make
a story
characters in
about
the
people
20s.
who are in their 20s rather than the
Yeah,
30s or the teens.
yeah, because there's no 20-year-olds.
Yeah,
There's 40. There is no. I suppose I think more people are writing them, but there's not a lot of late teens, or like
there's a lot of
18
people
or
reading
17, not 16 or anything like
who
that.
were that age as well. And like what I will say, I saw a thing, and I don't know if this is true, but most people's brains develop when they're 25 fully, but neurodivergent brains are more likely to finish developing a little later, so like almost 30 in some cases,
Oh,
depending on who you are. So
well,
like for
probably why they
example,
look
that means
younger.
that me, I could still be changing as a person until I'm like in my 30s, you know? And I just
Mm,
think that it's so important that YA is, while it might cater to adults in the sense that a good book that's well written can be enjoyed by anyone, and I've read some YA books that I've really enjoyed in the past few years, but I also think that we should learn to write books that fit age groups so that people don't feel like they have to read YA just to get a story that they can relate to or that's like
yeah,
readable, because it's not
yeah,
necessary. Like I think a lot of people, they dismiss classics and lit fic because of the complications and the flowery prose, and I get that because I don't love that, but also there are other options for that. And I think the more that we normalize writing that is accessible but also complicated in the undertones and the sort of analysis that you can do with it, the better that people's literacy will become, because subconsciously when you're reading, if you're reading properly, which I say properly because there is a wrong way to read, and it's to have the blinders on, take everything at face value, you know. I think that
yeah,
if you're reading a book correctly, it doesn't matter if you have conversations about it or write an essay about it. Your brain starts thinking about the stuff that's in it, and you get better, and you read something else that you would have thought was hard a few years ago, and then you think, well, actually, this is perfect for me.
yeah.
So I
See,
think
I've been
that,
talking about the whole. All I can think is the Hunger Games because that
yes,
I absolutely adore. Like, I
they
think
all,
some of it's not aged well, like for
mm.
the love triangle. But again,
But I
like
think
when I
that's really
reread it last
important
year,
still.
yeah,
Because the love
yeah,
triangle itself is a bit cringe because like it was never really a love triangle. But I think
no,
I will die on this hill. I don't think that Gale is a bad person. A lot of people, they see Gale and they're like, oh, but he dropped baby bombs and whatever. And it's like, okay, but he is supposed to represent someone who, after
he's been
being
radicalized.
repressed for years by this system, who has like watched his home be destroyed and watched people he cared about die, who had to drag people out of his home to save their lives. He has watched
Yeah,
everything, he has risked his life, and he
he's
knew
radicalized. So
that doing that thing would win them the revolution. Like he knew that it would win the rebels the whole capital, because the capital people would be disgusted by what they thought Snow had done. And it was a bad thing to do. It was something that did work, and it was something that he had been radicalized by his experiences. Like, he isn't supposed to be a bad person that you think is beyond any empathy or redemption. He is a realistic example of what happens when you live in that kind of society. And it's like, when you look at, for example, the most obvious example is the Israel-Palestine discourse. People who don't have empathy for Gail in any respect are the same people who are going to have no empathy for the people who are considered terrorists in Palestine and who believe that because it's the same thing. Those people are doing bad things, yeah, but they're doing it because it's a response to this oppression that they've suffered for decades. A Palestine narrative, when you think about it in that lens. Like, even the time frame is the same. It's insane.
It's just crazy. Especially, I think, because when I reread it, I could tell, this time I could tell Katniss was 16. I could tell she was 6.
Yeah, you read it and you're like, okay, fair enough.
I was like, yeah, this is a kid. Because when I read The Hunger Games when I was 15. And I was like, so I was the same age, pretty much. Well, I was the same age as Katniss. And I didn't pick up certain things until I read them. Years.
I think that I reread the two of them about 3 years ago now, maybe. And I only read the first two. I haven't read the third one yet. But I feel like, genuinely, they hold up so well, and the detail in them is insane. Like, Catching Fire, the whole revolution, you watch it unfold, but you don't understand what it is until it's revealed at the end that this meant this and this thing was because of this. And it's so good and it's so interesting, and at the same time as it's interesting, it has a really important message.
Yeah, I suppose, like, the message in The Lamb, I suppose it's like you're not tied down to your mother's wishes or your family wishes.
Yeah, and I think that sometimes you idolize your family, but they're not good people, and you kind of stick by them because you love them and you think that maybe they'll get better. Like, the abuse is very overt in this, which I appreciate. I think that it's important to not have her be like, and she kills them in the end, which is so smart. First of all, it was like, I wouldn't have thought to do it. But I also think it's really sad when you think that, like, she was dying and she knew she was dying and she knew she wasn't going to get out. So she chose to kill them. And then her coming back as like a spirit to haunt that place, that was really interesting, first of all, because I wasn't expecting it, because it, up until that point, while it was like fantastical in its like concept, I think that was the first overt like magical thing that happened. Shall we say magical?
Magical. I suppose it's magical realism as well.
Yeah. Like it, but only in the very end, which was like caught me off guard completely.
But I think that's good because it's not something you would have expected. It's like, because I suppose a lot of other stories would have just ended with her dying and that's it. We don't know what happens after.
Yeah. See, I think sometimes things, they can be really powerful when they end with a person dying, and then sometimes you need not necessarily closure, but you need to understand that like life moves on, and that it sucks, but like
life moves on no matter what.
Yeah. It's like the thing from Jurassic Park, Life Finds a Way, where, you know, you think that you have control of a situation and that we understand it because we're human and we're so smart and so special. And then you read a book like this and it just is so depressing. It's not even like horror in the sense that you're there thinking, oh, I'm so scared. It's horror in the sense that there's just no hope for a really long time.
Yes.
I mean, do we have like any other thoughts, or should we read some reviews? Do we think?
I think we should read some reviews. So I'll read with, like, I still don't really know how I feel, because when I reviewed it, I don't know how I feel about this one.
See, I still don't. 3.5 because my rating system, and I feel like this is actually really important. So my rating system is 1 star is stuff that I despised, stuff that I think about it and I finish reading it because I hate it so much. The 2nd star is for stuff that I didn't enjoy, but like it had like decent writing at least or something. So I'm like, okay, I'll let it off. 3 stars is sort of average. Like, I don't have any feelings either way. I might not reread it ever again, but I didn't necessarily not enjoy the reading experience. 4 is like almost perfect, and then 5 stars for me, I give something a 4-star rating if it's a 5-star, and if after a year since I read it I'm still thinking about it and still like think that it was good, I give it a 5-star. So there's no impulse 5 stars for me. So I gave it a 3.5, which means that it was more than just like average for me, but it wasn't living up to the expectations that I had.
Yeah, see, mine's more like, so 1 star, I hated it. 2 stars, it was alright. There was stuff I enjoyed, but like 3 stars is it was alright. It was alright, or I don't know how I feel about this. 4 stars, it was great, but there was things I would change. 5 stars, which I haven't given a 5-star book for a while. I cannot remember the last time I gave a 5-star.
We've spoken. It's your secret.
There is nothing I can think that I would change, or I wonder if I can see when the last time I rated a book 5 stars was.
See, I got very, very lucky. I had this year a few 5-star reviews, because I read, let me have a look at my list. The first book that I read was, funnily enough, Narcissus and Goldmund by Herman Hesse. Is that how you say it?
I have no idea.
Yeah, it might be Herman, because I think he might be German. But it's like a modern classic from 1930. And I gave that a 4-star, but I think that that's going to be a 5-star next year. Because I loved it. And then I followed that up with The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin, which I really enjoyed. The Assassin's Apprentice, the Farseer trilogy by Robin Hobb, which was absolutely fantastic. Remarkably Bright Creatures, which is like the octopus book, which I absolutely loved. A book about Formula One that I really liked. So like I started off really strong, and then it's slowly gotten a bit worse because I think it was too difficult to follow that. So like the last 3 books, I had a 3-star, a 2.5, a 2, and then it was Sunrise on the Reaping, then The Secret History, which I obviously didn't enjoy, and then it was like there was a book about asexuality, which I actually gave 2 stars, which we've been speaking today, but as someone who was hoping that that would be a good book representation-wise for myself, it was actually very disappointing. So,
which is sad, because there's not a lot of representation.
Yeah. And the thing is, I did look it up, the reviews, because I like to feel justified. And apparently I wasn't going insane. Like, there was a lot that was kind of problematic about it. So, that... I think my luck has ended a little bit on my 5-star reviews.
Yeah, I really can't remember. I'm trying to look through my Goodreads, which I know I shouldn't really use Goodreads, but I can't be bothered. It's got everything on there.
Do you know what,
it's just got all my books on there.
Storygraph, you can import your Goodreads history.
Yeah, wasn't there some controversy around Storygraph though, because of an AI thing?
I don't know. But,
there was some sort of like racist paragraph that ended up. Yeah, I'm not making this up. Was it?
I'm gonna have to look into that. Because it's what I use at the moment, and like, the thing is, I think it's better than Goodreads for me because
maybe there's another one. It might have been Storygraph or something else.
There's a few of them out there, but I'll look into
that.
Yeah,
basically because
like, yeah, not good.
They had like an AI generated thing, and it said something that was really racist, and they didn't like review it, and which is why AI is stupid, because I absolutely hate AI. It's been shoved in my face everywhere.
Anti-AI on this podcast, thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm sorry. If you AI generated something, you are not an artist, you are not a writer, you are someone who has just prompted something. Like, stolen.
The thing is, I'm saying this as a writer who is like actively aware that AI is trying to publish books, as someone who cares about my books and does research, all manually, mind you. I don't use AI to Google what it's gonna like be in this place in this time, you know, what the culture's like. I
Yeah.
actually
If you want
research
to
it.
Google something, AI is in the Google, but I always put minus AI because
Yeah, it's a nightmare. But like, I literally bought a book that yesterday or this morning or something. I was like, I need to order my skincare stuff, and I need to order some books while there's a Waterstones double stamps, because I was like literally one stamp away as well.
yeah, I went yesterday. I went because I went to use my gift card I had, and I
Oh,
got double stamps.
perfect.
And I was 1p off, and she rounded the stamps up for
Oh, I had someone who did
my
that
gift
for
card.
me. Who
Yeah, she was lovely.
It was so nice. But I ordered a book called Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice, which is very famous.
Isn't Anne Rice that person, that author that passed away, and she hated fanfic?
I'm not sure, but this book is like
She
one of those
hated
like
people.
cult classic ones,
Yeah, she hated people writing fanfic.
which is kind
So
of
she would
crazy.
go,
But
yeah, but she would go after anyone wrote fan fiction, and then when she died, people were posting their fan fiction. Why the hell? The thing is, I am a fan fiction person. I grew up,
yeah,
and I love it because some of it is so good
I am so
that
excited
it's like a published book.
for people to write fan fiction of my characters. I plan
Oh,
on
I
writing fan fiction
wish.
of my characters. Like, I
Oh, I already
literally,
do that for mine.
but I think that, you know, this book is supposed to be like a really fun vampire book. So I was like, I'll read that. And then I bought this book about the history of Romania, all the way through history. And they
Wow,
were actually way more expensive than I thought. But I think, you know, like doing research by hand, it's accessible. If you have access to AI, you have access to the internet, you have access to YouTube videos from people from those cultures, you have access to TikToks talking about them. I have characters from different countries in my book, which I'm going to talk about next time. But like, I look up these things about their culture, I look up the words that they use, and I don't use AI for it because there's no need. And as a reader, I think that it is insulting that you think that AI writing will ever be comparable to human writing, because AI cannot understand humanity. It never will be able to. It doesn't have a brain. It will never be able to feel and understand what it is like to feel the way that humans feel. You can't have a robot, basically. And I know that it's not a robot, like, but
But no, it's algorithms. I was actually having this conversation yesterday, and I was talking about I was talking about cave art, and how looking at cave art actually. Oh, this is gonna make me sound really sappy. It's like I actually like it makes me emotional looking at it because they knew how to do perspective, because
no, but
there's a famous cave in France they've made a replication of. They've made a replica of because people kept going in the original and it was damaging the paintwork.
Yeah.
But it's got, I think, over 100 drawings of like cave lions.
That's so cool.
One of them is facing the front and the other is facing the other way. It's just amazing when you think of how pretty. Like they had red ochre paint, which they used their hands up, and it's on the ceiling. So obviously they've probably got held up. It's just amazing.
And like as well, the thing that always gets me is when you see diary entries from people like 100 plus years ago, and they have similar feelings to the ones that we have now, and it's like we're all human, you know? And
We've never changed, like the Pompeii graffiti.
It's not even like a historical piece, but there's a painting called Peter Getting Out of Nick's Pool, I think. And the actual copy of it is in Liverpool, right? In like a museum in Liverpool. So I have grown up and I've been able to see it in this art gallery that has been like my local art gallery. And this painting, it's not even anything special, I don't think. Like it's quite famous, but it's not anything like sort of Renaissance style. It's just, when I look at it, I feel almost the way that I feel when I'm in Greece, which is where I grew up going on holiday like every year. And like I feel safe in Greece in a way that I don't feel safe in many places outside of like where I live, you know? And I think when you have that sort of like warm feeling in your chest, it's not always describable. And then you have these writers who put it into words. And like, The Bell Jar is one of my favourite books, and I say one of because it used to be my favourite of all time. I think that might be getting replaced by The Grapes of Wrath, or at least on par with. And it has a lot of things that are problematic about it. We've spoken about this before. But the reason why I love it so much is because when I was a teenager and I read it for the first time, I was very depressed. I had been depressed for like 6 years at that point. And it felt like no one really had ever explained to me that it was normal to feel the way that I felt, and that my depression, like I wasn't alone in it. Like, even though they'd said that, they hadn't had that sort of clicking connection of like, yeah, you get me. And this book managed to express how I felt and explain certain things about myself that I hadn't been able to explain.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's no algorithm ever that will be able to do that. There is, and I put that in my letter, my personal statement when I was going to university, that like the idea that one day I could write stuff like that gets people to feel that way, the idea of studying that kind of text for a really long time, and like The Grapes of Wrath is the book that I think is going to replace it or be up there with it, and that made me feel the same way. It made me feel an emotion that I'm not an eloquent enough speaker to explain, but it's such a magical thing, I think,
especially where something connects with it. So like, I'm a big manga reader. I read a lot of manga.
Yes.
And I've never read a manga where a character was like me in Natsume's book of manga. Yes, Natsume's Book of Friends. So the main character, Natsume, Takashi Natsume, but I'm just going to call him Natsume for his surname because it's easier. He has been isolated his entire life because he can see creatures called yokai. And his parents passed away. His grandma could see them. We're not sure if his parents could see them because his family history is he doesn't know much about it. So it's been passed from relative, and they don't treat him well, really, because he used to blurt out he could see these creatures. But obviously but he moves to this small town where I think he's his grandma, and she had a book, Natsume's Book of Friends, where she went around challenging yokai to duels and winning them. So they were like little games and stuff, and the story focuses on him meeting this yokai called Madara, who in exchange for him giving him the book, it's about him coming into his own character and making friends, and then actually trusting people about his secret, because he tells some of his friends about his secret. And I think he's going to tell his adopting, because the adopted parents have actually been really nice to him. I've never met a character who's myself, and then learn how to deal with it, and then to trust people again. I suppose Penny as well, my character in my book, it's the same sort of thing. So I think that probably inspired me a little bit.
Yeah, and it's like almost, the thing is as well, specifically with like manga and anime, they have so much work that goes into that on the art side as well. There's so much emotion and humanity in those pages automatically, I think. You read these very complex stories that it's weird, like, to explain it, but it does feel sometimes almost therapeutic to do, like, reading or writing of, like, characters that are similar to you, and especially, I think, when they are in that sort of format that you obviously connect with a lot, especially, it's quite special.
Yes.
Like, I think it's so amazing.
Interesting.
That when you don't do AI, it's like, how did we get on? I'm genuinely confused.
That's what I did. Literature analysis is very important.
Yes.
It's a very important skill that a lot of people lack because they have no media literacy.
It was because of Storygraph. Okay. Yeah, brain's connected now.
Yes, but like, going back to The Lamb to finish off before we can't.
We both gave it a fairly similar rating.
Because we talk about random rumble.
If we look at 1-star, because I think 1-star reviews, you said about this one before, where it's extremely overwritten. I don't think it did fail to get an emotional response from the reader. I feel like there was feeling there for me.
Yes, I suppose it's different for different people though, isn't it?
And it also says that the bleak ending should make sense with the rest of the plot, which this one didn't do. But like, it did. I do, however, agree with the sort of magical realism element.
Suppose if it had been like kind of hinted at, so maybe like some of the victims like helped her or something, then it might have been a bit. It does come out of nowhere. I can see.
Yeah, because
So
even if
this
it had just been like a hallucination on her end, sort of thing, like before she died, as a sort of, so like her brain saying, "Oh no, this is terrible. Let's not be here. Let's be somewhere safer." And then the safest place it could come up with was as a ghost.
Yeah, do you know what? I'm looking at one of these reviews, and I kind of agree. This is what she's put. It's a prime example of immature writing. I don't agree. The author failed to develop a plot interesting enough to keep me interested for more than 5 minutes. Well, clearly you read the whole book, but the endless cycle of dinner scenes and cringe dialogue. But then she goes on to say,
Who's? Oh, I see it.
That sounds like it's coming from a 20-year-old. No, yeah, that is exactly.
That is the big problem that we both mentioned, yeah.
Yeah, I think if she'd made the character maybe 12.
Just a bit older.
Yeah,
like,
I think
teenager, but old enough that she had that
7
sort
to
of...
12, I think would. Well, I think 10 to 12 would have worked perfectly, because if you speak to a 12-year-old, like, some 12-year-olds are very that quick-witted.
Am I being really stupid, or is she not supposed to be that good at school either?
I don't think so. Yeah, because this review mentions that she's not supposed to be. I don't think she listens. She's not supposed to be good at maths, but then maths is a horrible subject anyway, so I understand. I was like, when she, because her mum tells her not to stand out, which is why. But I think she is good, because then she starts trying.
Yeah. It does just sound a bit too old.
Yeah, but it's really difficult to write kids, which is why a lot of YA starts with the age of 16, because 16 is such... A 15-year-old is very different from a 16, and a 14-year-old is different from a 16.
Yeah.
Because that's such a hard age to write, which is why a lot of middle grade a little bit.
See, I also agree with this next review from that one, which says that the chapters change quite quickly. I do think that there were some chapters that felt very random.
Yeah, I think it's hard. I think she was trying, because I always got taught that you need to find a balance between the actual plot and the characters. Like, you don't want to go straight into the plot, but then you don't want to spend...
Yeah.
Kind of balance.
I think there were some, like, scenes that maybe it was like they were cool in theory, but they didn't have as much purpose as they would have needed to be included.
Yeah.
Okay, see, this person says that there is zero aspect of whimsy or magical realism, which I disagree with.
Well, how is she a ghost?
Yeah.
Someone's just put disgusting, don't read while eating. Pointless story about cannibal. Why would you read this while you're eating?
That is like rule number 1 of cannibal stories. Is you don't,
I didn't like this at all. Why are we writing about cannibalism? Because it's a horror story.
Yeah. See, the thing is, like, some other people... I think it's very Brothers Grimmy.
It's gothic horror. It's a very gothic horror.
Food, the way that it's described as, like, being delicious. And, like, for me, the most disgusting part was the references to her feeling them in her stomach. Because I was like, oh, God. This child is really messed up, huh? But
then she's had a rough upbringing.
I think it makes sense that she's so messed up, but this is like... It's so... okay, let me see some 3-star reviews, because I think that's kind of where we both sat, was like not quite at the bottom.
Yeah.
Okay, so this person compares it to... I don't know if you've heard of all of these, but Night Bitch, Lapvona, and A Certain Hunger are on there. I've read one of those. Watched the film for one of them. Yeah, I get it. I think when you read too much of the same sort of thing.
Okay, that one, the one below, it says, my biggest problem is the problem it reads like it takes place in the 1940s Appalachia.
Yes.
Yes, this is exactly what I'm so glad that we kind of had thoughts though, because we were trying to struggle with
Yeah.
the
The thing where it says, like, do they not, the police not exist? Even without police, there'd be true crime podcasts. I do agree with that. I think that that is, like, the biggest thing that, like, tested my ability to believe this story.
because the UK, like, but people do go missing in the UK, like on the Yorkshire moors and stuff, don't
But
they?
if
And
someone kept going missing in this one specific part of Cumbria,
yeah, there would be. It'd be like, you know how like Americans go missing in the national park. There's
yeah.
podcasts about that
And there's
and
got to be people,
documentaries.
like, they make people crash their cars basically by giving them flat tires. There's got to be at least some people who, instead of walking into the woods, would be like, you know, let me walk down the road and see if I can flag down another driver or something. Like, there's got to be some
Yeah, would you
people.
trust yourself going into some random stranger's house that lives in
Absolutely
the middle of
not,
nowhere?
especially not in the woods.
Exactly.
Like, I've got survival instincts, you know? I think
Some people don't though.
I would probably try and go back the way I'd come if there was a village nearby, or walk further down the road. And then the police would get a report eventually of like a few people whose cars had been on that same road. And they would be like, well, that's interesting. Why is that happening?
Exactly. So to wrap up my thoughts off, yeah, I'm still not sure like where I stand with the book, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those books I'm always going to be conflicted over. Like, I think the writing, like, I don't agree with people saying the writing's bad.
Yeah,
I think the writing's quite good,
it's
but yeah, I
objectively a
just don't think it's
strong
child.
lit fic contender.
I think if I hadn't read other stuff,
Sorry.
sorry,
Yeah, I get what you mean, but the wording made me chuckle.
if I've read other stuff, but I mean, like, if I didn't have, like, I've grown up reading, but else think it
Yeah.
was like if I haven't read other lit fic that it's like the first lit fic amazing thing I've ever read.
I do agree. I think that it was a good book in the sense that, especially for a debut,
Yes.
but I think that the actual plot, while interesting, it wasn't quite what I had in mind. Like, it wasn't as punchy as I thought it would be. Vibes were on point though. Like, I'm pretty sure that was the vibe that was aimed for. I
Yeah,
think
she got the atmospheric
yeah.
done right.
I think that's a really difficult thing to get right sometimes. So yeah, I think it wasn't bad at all, but it was not my thing, which is fine. She's writing another book at the minute. The author, they're like, I think they've got maybe another book deal, or because they've got a really successful published book, then she's like obviously writing another one. But that is what the social medias are at the minute, and I actually follow Lucy Rose on TikTok. So I will probably read the next book from the same author as The Lamb, but I don't know if, and even if I didn't enjoy it, to be fair, like, I'm a writer, so I want to support other writers, even if they're not writing stuff that's for me.
I think so. She's got such a strong debut. I think other stuff that comes out will be very good. Especially, I really like Ara Huang. I think she's like her first book. You can see that it's kind of got those YA features with like the school and stuff with like the Poppy War. But then the second book and the third book is where she really shines. The second book is
Yeah.
but then Babel, I think Babel will be her magnum opus.
Well, is that
Oh no, Catabatis, yes. I can't
Yes.
wait for Catabatis.
I think that when you've got that like strong base to start from, because like I'm not gonna, because we're gonna talk about writing next whenever, but I think that
Whenever.
it really is like, as a writer myself, I can appreciate that a debut novel is very difficult. And I think it was the first novel that Lucy Rose had written, because the way that on TikTok, in the process of writing the second book, the wording that's been used to me suggests that it's the second book ever, not necessarily the second book published. I'd have to check that. But if that is the case, then like, you gotta accept that that's a pretty strong start, actually.
Yes. Well, yeah, I'd definitely say it's still a 3-star read for me. But yeah, so next week we're going to be talking about writing, which I'm really excited for.
Love a good yap about the writing
All day.
space.
Yeah, I can't wait. We both can just talk about our books, and
because
obviously we're not going to
books
spoil
as
anything.
well, so we know each
Yeah.
other's like characters, and it's
Yes.
it'll be fun. And I think that this whole podcast thing is something that we're still learning, but
Yeah.
hopefully we can, as we get a bit better at like keeping our thoughts on track and not going off on 10-minute rambles, we'll get to talk about more books in an episode, and
Yes.
have a bit more analysis as writers on it as well.
Yeah, I think the next book shall be Sunrise on the Reaping, because I need to actually read the book. So I think that's the next book we'll do, but I need to read it first.
I've written like an hour-long plus review of it, and like even that, I haven't watched it yet. So many thoughts that I haven't said. So I think, I
haven't read it yet. Ooh. I haven't been spoiled for it either, so I've done pretty well. I'm probably going to read it next week.
Look at you, honestly, at this point. But yeah, yes. Thank you for listening if you've made it this far. Very much appreciate it. I hope that you choose to tune in next time.
Yeah, I think we should put our social media handles as well.
Yeah.
So I use TikTok the most, pretty much now. I do use YouTube, but I think with my TikTok, you can find me at benches. Don't ask. We'll put them in the description.
Yeah. My Instagram and I think also my TikTok are holly.eon. And I'll link my YouTube as well, because I think that's just, it's Holly. It's my name. We would love you to follow us elsewhere. We'd love you to follow us here. We are going to try and be super regular with this, because it's something that we're both interested to try and see if it works. I think it does.
Even if it's not a week, it'll be like maybe every 2 weeks or so.
Yeah, we want to like really get this going into a nice flow, especially because I think the more books that we've written, the more we'll have to talk about on the writing front, the more perspective we'll have of the publishing industry and blah blah blah. Yeah. So anyway, I usually just say bye, but I think, should we?
Yeah, if we just say thank you for listening to the holistic rambles. That's probably not the right word, but
catch you next time.
Thank you for listening. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.